There's the line in that song that talks about spinning around, and every time that comes on, I can see everyone trying to think, should I spin around right now? And then not spinning around, and it feels so cognitively dissonant. We'll have to, second service note, give them permission to spin. So when you all called me to this pulpit 3 years ago or so, you did so, I hope, knowing that the Unitarian Universalist propensity for fascination and self-congratulation was a no-go with me. Which means, presumably, the same is true for you. We're not here to confirm ego and entertain. Can I get an amen? We are here to do something, to help each other do something. I am called to this role for two primary reasons. One, I yearn for spiritual connection. And two, I very earnestly want to save the world. On the way, I'm learning that those two things are actually the same thing. And I assume that on some level, whether you admit it or not, you are here for similar reasons. We know that for reasons rooted both in effectiveness and integrity, we can't do any of that alone. And so here we are. So, what do you say? Shall we actually do something? Okay. We better, because we're at an inflection point. And by we, I mean this congregation, this city, this state, this country, the whole world. I mean all of us together. We are at what in fiction they call the pinch point. That point where the odds become so wildly stacked against the protagonists that there seems to be no possible way to achieve a happy resolution. Now, in triumphal stories, the heroes navigate the pinch point to victory, and in tragedies, they do not. Both can be meaningful, but especially when we are the protagonists, one of those outcomes is very much preferred. So we're at the pinch point, and either we make it or we don't. If we make it, it will be an initiation, a global rite of passage, beyond which, as is the case with all rites of passages, a new way of being. Now, looking at it like this is kind of funny, because one of the reasons that we are at this inflection point is because we have forgotten and or lost our ability to conduct meaningful rites of passage. So here we stand before a global rites of passage without any real knowledge or experience of knowing how to do that. Dereliction of rites of passage is both a symptom and a cause of the malady that afflicts us. And that's sort of the central thesis to this part of today's reflection. Dereliction of rites of passage is both a symptom and a cause of the malady that afflicts us, globally and personally. For millennia, humans knew that rites of passage were key to both the development of spiritually and psychologically healthy adults and the maintenance of a culture flourishing in its ecological niche. That's what rites of passage finally do. They develop the individual and maintain the culture, all of which rests upon a shared world view, a shared story. So one of the main reasons why we have let our rites of passage fade and find ourselves at this inflection point is because our shared story is no longer appropriate. Our shared story lost its connection to place, became ungrounded, all transcendence, no eminence, mistaking aspiration for accomplishment, lacking humility and relationship, all ego, no family. It may be that the story shattered because it was too rigid and brittle to withstand change and expansion. Or it just got too high off the earth and depressurized. It's hard to say if we lost our enthusiasm for our rites of passages because we lost our story, or if we lost our story because our rites of passage no longer made sense. Whatever the cause, our shared story has been shattered and subverted. And actually, this in and of itself is not necessarily a bad thing. It may even be a necessary thing. After all, a rite of passage is the disintegration of an old story or self and a discovery of a new one. In that case, the fracturing of our shared story may not only be necessary, but despite all the destruction it may bring, a dissolution might actually be good in the long run. If we manage to be victorious rather than tragic, if we are able to navigate the pinch point, if we reinstitute meaningful rites of passage. So let me step back a minute and clarify what I mean by a rite of passage. A rite of passage is a community-supported ordeal that initiates individuals into a new way of being. It produces people who are secure in their personhood, their power, and their role. A ceremonial technique it uses to produce that security entails metaphorical but very much real death and rebirth. Death of the old stage or role, rebirth into a new stage or role. The present watered-down ceremonies, the Marines notwithstanding, that we refer to as rites of passage do not have anything near that level of duress. And we are weaker and more fractured for it. So this ritualized death and rebirth is also good practice for all the deaths and rebirths that life foists upon us without our consent, up to and including the final and actual moment of biological death. Rites of passage prepare us to face all of that with courage, grace, and enthusiasm. They're simply good preparation, good practice. So when you are properly tempered enough to face difficulty with courage, grace, and enthusiasm, the chances of prevailing are much higher. Tragedy, if that be our fate, is turned, if not beautiful, then meaningful. It is important to note that, like our shared story, initiation and rites of passage are inexorably derived from, born from, and in relationship with the land. Story, self, and land are intertwined. For it is in the interdependence of person, place, and people that harmony is achieved. If those are not intertwined, we find ourselves exactly where we are. So what we're talking about is a sort of new Holy Trinity of person, place, and people. So now we're Trinitarian Unitarians. What this means is that to lose our rites of passage is to lose our shared story and is also to lose our relationship with the land, with the earth. Losing our rites of passage is losing our sense of interdependence, losing our interbeing with the world, losing ourselves. When we forget our embeddedness with the world, our culture becomes fractured, as do our own souls. And this actually reveals that we are, in a sense, the land. Likewise, an embedded and ecologically informed culture has the capacity to hold immense diversity, exactly as ecospheres do. Diversity is necessary to a healthy forest, to a healthy eco-range. Meanwhile, a disembedded, disembodied culture fractures along the same differences that makes a healthy system flourish. There is no fully realized person without place and people, and no coherent people without place and fully realized persons. We are interbeings. And when we do not feel our interbeing, as most of us do not, even if we want to, if we do not feel that in our blood, then we are broken and sundered from ourselves, which is also the world. And I think that's where we are. The pinch point. At the gates of initiation without any experience in navigating the passage. Complicating what needs to happen for a successful global initiation. What needs to happen for us to save the world. Complicating that is the fact that our loss of rites of passage as more localized communities has not equipped us to navigate this initiation with grace and courage. So it's a bit of a catch-22. If we are to navigate this pinch point, we need a shared story reinforced by rites of passage. But to have a shared story, we need rites of passage to maintain the shared story that we no longer have. So where do we start? Well, after exhaustive research, I can confidently say, somewhere. Anywhere. We need to start. Time is tight. And in some ways, we actually have started. We've been mining ancient stories to see if any still resonate in our bones enough to resuscitate into a larger shared story. But that is a long and abstract experiment. So we need to try other means as well. Pointedly, we need to bring back the rite of passage. The initiatory sequence, complete with an encounter that challenges our notion that we will survive it. To that end, beginning this April and running into June, we will conduct a Rite of Passage program here at All Souls. We'll have an information session on Zoom on the evening of April 8th for those who are curious. And you can look for more details on upcoming e-bulletins. We're looking for 6 to 8 people who are at a personal inflection point or a period of transition. So are you retiring? Are you facing a difficult diagnosis, considering a life change? Is there a particular and critical question that embracing and facing may move you into a new phase? Are you eldering or exiting a prolonged adolescence? I know someday I will exit my adolescence, and presumably this would help me do it. If so, you may want to consider this program. So here's the shape of it. We're evolving what used to be our fire tender program into the Rite of Passage program with a few crucial additions. The fire tender program is about going deep with connecting a particular question or intention to the land by loosening our grip on our assumptions so as to allow the Spirit to move and meaning and connection to emerge. So to that program, we are adding three important aspects. One is the encounter, an ordeal to rival the rites of old. Ideally, the fire tender program will prepare you for this to some extent. The ordeal could be a wilderness vigil, a multi-day fast, a facilitated plant medicine journey, breathwork, or whatever practice is appropriate, just so long as there is an aspect of an ordeal in it, the experience which ushers one through the fear of death and into the soundness of life. But while I am conducting the program, I am not a plant medicine guide or a wilderness vigil leader. Therefore, the encounter will be, by and large, outsourced, which unfortunately may entail, at this juncture of the program, some financial burden on a participant who wants to hire somebody to help. The second thing we're adding is more community. Participants in the Rites of Passage program will need to enlist 2 to 3 people to companion them. Not to come to all the meetings or participate in the encounter, but to scaffold the participants with personal support and spiritual care and accompaniment. The companions will be there for the introductory feast and ceremony, and for the feast of return and welcoming back ceremony. And also we'll take some time during a Sunday service to offer blessings and acknowledgement to the participants. Because ultimately this program is a community event, even if you are not directly participating in it. And this is incredibly important. There are plenty of Rites of Passage programs in the world. You can find them online, but to me, they feel sort of like a drive-through window Rite of Passage. They're not connected to community. They're not conducted within the container of any kind of lasting community or tradition. And this was my own experience with the Psychedelics for Religious Leaders retreat. I participated back in 2020-something. It was an invaluable and hugely meaningful experience for me, but it was also missing something. It was missing community. It was missing something that could reintegrate my experience and acknowledge my experience and benefit from my experience. And then also, my personal relationships were not formally prepared for the state that I would be in upon return. For while an encounter of this nature may come to an end, its effects continue to ripple out, and it is likely that sensitivities remain elevated for a while. So it's good to have prepared companions. The third addition is the appropriate response of a newly initiated person to a supportive community, which is to say service. In this case, the service will be offering a reflection on a Sunday about their experience in the Rites of Passage program, which would be, among other things, a contribution to the shared story that is Unitarian Universalism. You see, in the end, the Rites of Passage program is not just for the seeker, but for all of us, for the whole community. And eventually, the support, participation, and service will begin to form a positive feedback loop. The community element is so critical that there will be a requirement, by the way, that the participant be an engaged member of All Souls for at least a year. So if you're not a member, and this is attractive, this may be aspirational. Join, participate. A year later, you can enter this program. There will also be some consideration, of course, around mental and physical health. So some covenanting meant to keep both participants and the church safe. So that's the shape of the thing. That's the shape of the thing that we can do. Person, place, people. This is how we find connection and save the world. By becoming full persons and cultures capable of navigating the pinch point. Do not settle for ego and entertainment, but rather participate in your own yearning. Find connection there and save the world. Do something. Something to do right now would be to rise in body or spirit as we sing our closing hymn.